Hi, and welcome to Bailey's Blueprint, the podcast that goes over various categories of creative writing and the specific distinctions in formatting, structure, and topic that place written pieces in certain categories. With that said, let's start sketching out our writing blueprints. So, hi, once again, and thanks for tuning in. You're listening to college kid, creative writer, and formatting fanatic, Bailey! So, this episode's topic today is gonna be about acrostic and Abecedarian poetry. That's a fun one. So, acrostic poetry, that's what we're starting with. It's free verse, meaning that there is not anything specific with rhyme count or such, or syllables or whatever. The only thing you have to worry about is having the first words in your lines of your poem match with a set of vertical letters that are a part of a word that you've chosen as part of your topic of the poem. So like most people use acrostics as acronyms to help with memorization. I believe one of them is like a math formula. I should have looked that up. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. That acronym could be considered an acrostic poem. Not really, because it's not poetry. It's just an acronym. But things like that can be considered acrostic poetry if you actually wrote a poem using that formatting. Anyway, but it's also very common for people to write an acrostic poem using the name of the person that they're dedicating the poem to. A lot of love letters are written this way because you can just put the person's name. I don't know, if you were going to spell out Jesus, it would be J-E-S-U-S. And then you would have a line of poetry that the first word of that line would start with a J. And then the second line of the poem would start with E, and all the way down. That's just my example off the top of my head, because why not? So, but an example of an acrostic poem is actually called An Acrostic by Edgar Allan Poe. So, and if you go look that one up, you'll find it's a very beautiful piece, written about his wife, because it was written and dedicated to his wife, Elizabeth. And so her name is spelled out with the letters that start each line. So yeah, that's just the standard way to do an acrostic poem. Another well-known acrostic is Lewis Carroll's Boat Beneath a Sunny Sky, which was dedicated to, really hope I don't butcher her name right now. It was dedicated to Alice Pleasance Liddell, I believe, because supposedly Alice Liddell is the girl who inspired Alice, the character, in Alice in Wonderland, which is, that's just kind of neat. So he has the girl's name vertical, and then the poetry that he has goes into the scriptures about the story of Alice in Wonderland, but it's still technically dedicated to Alice Pleasance Liddell. So yeah, and a side note, I know for me, the whole reason that I even looked up acrostic poetry was because there is an acrostic poem that I absolutely love in the Bible, Psalm 119, however you want to say it. The whole little section of Psalm 119 is technically an alphabetic acrostic poem when it's in its original language of Hebrew. So in translation, the alphabetic acrostic formatting of this poem gets a little lost because it is tied to the Hebrew alphabet, not the English one. And the alphabets don't really translate that well, so yeah. But it's another example about how acrostic poems are used to teach. and their help with memorization, stuff like that, because Psalm 119, as an alphabetic acrostic poem written in Hebrew, is supposed to help people, or kids, I guess, whoever they were teaching the poem to, was supposed to help them learn their Hebrew alphabet, as well as a few of the morals that they believed. So, cool fact there. Moving on, we have Abecedarian that I mentioned earlier, this form of poetry. So, it's a bit looser in structure than their standard acrostic poem, but it's just, as you write, you're writing with the intention to follow the letter sequence of the alphabet. So, like, A all the way through Z, or you could, just do G to R, It's looser in structure than your standard acrostic poetry, because then it's just really loose. It's kind of funny. But as you write, you're supposed to do it with the intention of following the alphabetic letter sequence as you go through your thing, and you include certain words, or you can have one word, or you can have multiple words. You can find that in the examples that I found. But the words that start with the letters in the alphabet, and they're in order of how the alphabet is ordered, which is why they're called Abecedarian, because you're following the ABCs. So, the first one that I have for an example is Jessica Greenbaum. I believe that's how you say the last name. Jessica Greenbaum. It's titled A Poem for S. And so the title starts with an A, and that's what kicks off their poem, I believe. So it's A, poem for S, and then their second line starts with B, their third line starts with C, fourth line starts with D, all the way down to work their full way through the alphabet. So it's a really good example of, a more traditional Abecedarian poetry. Other versions, I wanted to say variations, other versions of Abecedarian poetry don't always keep to having the alphabetic letters start off your lines. That's a traditional, not a lot of follow that. They often try to embed the words within the structure of their poem instead of starting their lines of their poem with it. One really good example of that I just had a blast reading, it's a little all over the place, but it's just a really good read, is Mate. I believe that's how you say his name. Mate Harvey's The Future of Terror /1 poem. So the title is The Future of Terror /1, which is kind of crazy for a title. I don't know, I think it's funny. Yeah, but that is Matthew Harvey's, not Matthew. I don't know. I should have looked that up. I'm sorry. Yeah. But that is the gist of what I have for today's episode about acrostic and Abecedarian poetry. So, yeah. Hopefully these episodes are succeeding in introducing you to new types of writing that you can therefore use to express yourself later. If listeners have questions, concerns, suggestions for future topics, please make sure to leave me a comment below. I'll get back to those as soon as I can. Again, thank you so much for listening in to Bailey's Blueprints, and I hope y'all enjoyed, and I wish you all the best in writing out your own drafts. Bye!